Hi, everybody. Welcome to CSA Bangalore Cyber AI Insights and Power of Knowing Forums Knowledge Nexus Tech that moves you, ideas that scale you. And the topic of discussion today is data privacy, transforming compliance from checkboxes to culture. Your go to podcast on tech, cybersecurity, strategy, and growth. I'm your host, Prem Kumar AS, and today we will explore data privacy is making a difference in the industry. So, with special welcome to all who have been tuned into CSA Bangalore chapter and Power of Knowing Forum's collaborative podcast, episode 241 on LinkedIn Live. And we have the honor of having Mr. Pradeep Kumar MP, Head Cloud Security, Privacy and Compliance Delivery, joining us. Let's welcome our esteemed speaker to the podcast event and dive into the topic. Hi, Pradeep. Welcome to our show. How are you, sir?
Hi Prem, I'm fine. How about you?
Good, Pradeep. Small intro about yourself, your journey, Pradeep, so that we have an understanding to the audience on what you do and how have you been part of this journey of your career. So, over to you, Pradeep.
Thank you. Thanks, Prem. Thanks for having me. So it's my pleasure to be part of this podcast and also part of CSA Bangalore chapter. So I have 22 years of experience, predominantly in telecom software. So I have worked in organizations like Motorola, Siemens, which later became Nokia Siemens, and then currently I'm part of Ericsson. So I have had my own journey of working in OBS and then 5G cloud and then now security, privacy and compliance, predominantly for market areas like Europe and Americas. So that has been my journey. So yeah, looking forward for this podcast.
Yes, sir. Let's dive into the topic. Let's talk on how data security or data privacy is playing a key role. What does it truly mean to transform compliance from checkbox activity into a company-wide culture? Because we always think about if I've checked something and that's done, right? So
Yeah.
how do you look at this point, Pradeep?
See, predominantly, most organizations or the most employees think that compliance or the privacy compliance is mainly about adhering to the regulations, right? It's just a checklist that we have to comply for from whatever the regulations that has been implemented either in GDPR or DPDP Act. But the culture mainly is about integrating privacy into organization core values, the behaviors, or even into the day-to-day operation, so that it becomes your organizational core culture, so that there are no data privacy breaches, or you're having these data security or the data protection in your day-to-day operations. Because as long as your organization is displaying the trust, transparency, or the accountability for the data, even your customers will start trusting you, and then they will be part of your organizational business and then interactions and so on, right? So that is where we have to move from checkbox activity to the company wide culture of having data privacy and then data privacy practices that needs to be imbibed. And just to give you an example, right? I mean, organizations doesn't take it seriously until there is a breach. Because at least recently, I know that there was one IT company where they had a misconfigured API, and then there was a breach. That's when they realized that everyone in the organization should be on top of data privacy and then protecting the data and so on. So that's how it is.
No, I think what you're saying is right, because now if you look at really people, we've come a far place, I think, in terms of understanding what is security, Pradeep. So what has happened is, I this is my view, you can comment on it. What we saw was the initial start, when I started my journey way back in 2019, I say 2000, when I started, it was called network security, right? So
Right.
then it became information security.
Yeah.
Then when we ventured into cloud, we were saying it is cloud security or cyber security, right? Now if you're looking at security has been always a cost center for the organization, and
Exactly.
most of the time business does not understand the value until there's a breach.
Yeah,
There's a hefty fine that is coming into picture. But that trend has changed over the period, and that is after I think we moved to the cloud, we are talking more about security. And when the digital enterprises are kicking in, where you look at most of the data being digitized and everything served as a platform on the digital realm, so it becomes more crucial for organizations to look at security as overall, right? So uh, even today, most of the time people feel, oh, check security is a checkbox, but
yeah.
it isn't. So that's what I wanted to add to what you were talking about. Where do you most of the organization falter when trying to implement data privacy framework like GDPR or DPDP? Now DPDP is still to come up as an implementation, but how do we look at it?
See, most organization falter in implementing the robust privacy data privacy practices in their
Mm,
organization, right?
mm,
So
mm.
they need to have the right tools, and then the different departments have to work together, like HR, IT, legal, and then even the engineering team. Everyone has to work together because it's not one particular team's responsibility, whether the legal team are having specific compliance guidelines or the privacy guidelines which needs to be adhered to, or maybe whether it is engineering team which implements the design privacy by design, right? So that is it's not that. So every organization have to implement as a together and as a team, right? It's not a siloed work that has to be done. So most organization falter in not having the right tools for protecting the data, or even the implementing the process, and then even training their employees. That has to be the culture. So it has to be day in day out. So even all the CEOs have to perform the not CEOs, I would say, the leadership team have to have the floor walk, and then they have to hear the their engineering team or the bottom of the pyramid team who are working on the projects or some data support requests and all. So they should be having an ear to them to understand, and then keep tuning the data privacy practices in their organization.
I think you are right, in whatever we are talking in terms of it. It becomes more important after DPDP, at least, where every data which we are talking about, how it is being collected, how it is being stored, how it is getting used,
Yeah.
what would be the period that it will be put under backup, how will be put at archive, and then when will it be deleted. So that structure has to come into picture when you are collecting data, and every consent has to be looked at from the individual. That's what I see from what we see at the DPDP coming in. Now, how should companies balance innovation with the speed, with privacy and compliance in today's data driven world, Pradeep?
Okay, so as I was mentioning, we touched upon briefly in previous section, right? So, privacy and innovations are not opposing forces, right? When done right, this privacy becomes an enabler of trusted innovation, right? So you have to follow like privacy by design, and then privacy engineering, and then the risk based approaches or the broad categories which you have to look into. Say for example, you also touched upon the consent, right, from the customers. So you collect the data for KYC and so on, and then reuse it for something else, right? So which was not the case. So you need to have the security for the privacy, and then the logging for privacy, and then usage of that data, and then retention, and then disposal, and then the data quality and all. So those things have to be taken care, and also you have to give notice to users in case if the data is being used for specific, if not for the specific purpose, for any other purpose within the organization, right? And then if you are collecting the data, you have to inform at least if some banks, at least they tell you that you are collecting the data for KYC, but some startups with unknowingly they might collect the data, or they might be collecting knowingly, but it is not communicated to the users or to their subscribers, right? So that there are some of the things that can be implemented for balancing the innovation and speed, and then also embed the data minimization and then the anonymization and access control into their tech stacks. So those things have to be taken care in this data driven world.
True on that, because every data matters, right? Now, coming into how do we look at a moment where, or you can share a moment where compliance misstep became a valuable learning. So, is there anything that we look at during your implementation, Pradeep?
Okay, at least I mean, all the views that I am sharing here are my personal rather than my
Yeah.
organizational view. So I should have made this disclaimer earlier itself.
No,
So,
no, we'll put a disclaimer here as you speak. So, there's a disclaimer going down there.
okay. So, yeah, if not my example, maybe I can give you another organization where I have observed,
Hmm.
So they had their own 3PP vendor where their encryption algorithm were not robust enough to capture the data and so on. And then their data transfer processes and then the organizations that they had I mean, their subsidiary organizations or the nearshore centers they had. So they didn't have the robust process, data privacy practice, right? Say, for example, in GDPR. So if you are working for Scandinavian countries for any of the insurance or telecom companies, you are not supposed to transfer the data outside European Union or so. And then the people who are supposed to work, they are supposed to be from I mean, citizens of European Union or NATO nations. I mean, you're not supposed to work as a Chinese SME or India SME or non-European Union, basically, right? Or even non-NATO national. So you can't be working like that. So I mean, we observed that, and then we had to inform them about all the GDPR. I mean, the way for the vendor, so they shouldn't be transferring the data outside the signed contract with the customer and so on. So that's what the IT vendor was informed about. So after that, they had to set up the robust guidelines and then data privacy practices within their organization so that they are not breaching the GDPR or DPDP regulations.
Okay, that's a good pointer where we see all the vendors and others also are looking at these pointers where when data is being processed, how do we look at the pointers that needs to be looked at, and that is a real case scenario where we need to see how data is getting processed, from where it is getting processed and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Now, how do we enable cross-functional teams like legal, IT, HR to rely around the privacy as a shared goal? Because as we started the conversation, privacy or data security or any pointers that we put as security, governance, and compliance, it's not going to be an individual person's thing. It is more to look at overall teams to be part of it, and it is an organization goal rather than an individual goal, right? Now, when we speak on that, how do we make all these teams come and understand as this is going to be a shared goal as an organization, right?
Yeah, I mean, you had the answer in your question itself. It's
Mhm.
about having a shared goal for
Yeah.
the cross-functional teams, right? So they need to have the shared KPIs. It's not that these we also briefly touched upon previously, right? So you
Mm.
can't work in silos. So these legal, IT, or HR, so they have to work together because HR has a role in training the employees and then ensuring that they're up to the mark in understanding the data privacy practices. What are the law of land? What are the regulations like
Mm.
GDPR or DPDP Act or HIPAA? So HR has a major role in training the employees and enabling them, right? And then on IT, they need to have right tools in the organization which enables their team to work on it, whether they are storing the data or they're having the data is in transit or they're
Mm.
using the data, right? So they need to know what are the critical data, what are the sensitive data, and then right identity access management should also be there, getting the proper roles for them to access the data, right? And then legal teams also have a important role to make everyone understand what are the changes that are implemented, if there are any new changes that are coming in the regulations. So they need to work together with other teams also. So predominantly they need to have the shared KPI across all the teams for having the right alignment in the business objectives. So, and also we need to have a privacy champions, to nominate representatives from each department so that they work together. It's not that everyone has their own priorities to those specific departments. So at least for the data privacy practices, we need to have privacy champions who are the go-to person, and then they can work together specifically from each department. A privacy champion has to be nominated, and then each one of the champions or the organization should also, the SMEs or the employees, they have to empathize with each other, to understand what are the priorities, what are the constraints that they have in terms of implementing this and so on. So everyone has to work together, right? So that's how the cross-functional teams come into picture.
We spoke about cross-functional teams. Now,
Mm.
how do we look at some of the blind spots companies face even after being compliant on paper, right?
Mhm.
What could be those common blind spots companies face?
Okay. So if you ask me, if, common blind spots are like using unauthorized IT tools. So
Mhm.
unknowingly, you might be using it. It might be a false software that you might have downloaded from the internet, which might be leaking the data internally, unknowingly, right? So you have to ensure that the whatever the tools that you are using within the organization, they are approved tools, and then they are not unauthorized ones, so that there is no data leak. Okay. So the other things are like third party risk. So whether you need to have robust understanding with the third parties, so that they are not mishandling the data. They know that what type of data they are handling and for what purpose they are using that data and so on. So those things have to be taken care. And also sometimes it's also about audit fatigue. So when they say that, this is the compliance checklist, or you have the regulation checklist for data privacy, so people will go through hundreds of questions, and then it's like, they will be complying to multiple things, but it will not be leading to real outcomes. So you will have lot of questionnaire, and then responses have to be provided by employees or the users and so on. But what is the real outcome? I would say sometimes it will be nil, right? So these are some of the blind spot that companies have to look into. Unauthorized tools, and then third party risk, or the audit fatigues and so on.
What I felt with that pointer that you are saying is uh, tools have to be certified, right? And
Exactly.
those tools which are certified by the organization, checked for the vulnerability stuff that is there, how do they maintain the posture in terms of when they come into an enterprise class is what somebody has to look at. Now, how can leaders use a, or build privacy first teams to and deliver behavioral changes where they look more about empathy to be added to it? So my question to you is, how can leaders use empathy to build privacy first teams and drive behavioral changes,
Okay.
Pradeep?
So at least first the leaders have to be the security champions. Okay. So they need to champion the security in their organization, and then they should be, promoting the transparency in training. So they have to work together with the HR and then the training teams on the data privacy practices, and then so provide clear and concise training on the data privacy practices. And then they have to walk the floor, and then all employee meet, or in the multiple forums, or in the meetings and all. So they need to regularly interact with employees, and then sensitize and then socialize about data privacy. And they have to keep telling the stories, and then they should also give real life examples on if there are any data breaches, how did that impact the organization in terms of penalties, or in terms of the fine that they had to pay and so on. And even because of the breaches, how did the customers lose trust in our organization. So they need to work on telling the stories and then connecting with real life scenarios with their employees and so on. So this empathy leads to lasting behavioral change in terms of organizations and then the employees working on the data privacy or the data protection, right?
Yes, Pradeep. I think we'll have to look at empathy to a larger extent because uh, today's environment, people think it is all more about machines being or any software or any this one that is getting implemented is for machines, not for humans. So that's the
Yeah,
challenge that we are facing at the moment. And
correct.
I would like to, I've been reiterating this in all the podcasts that we've been doing, this whatever we are building as a solution, whether it is cybersecurity or AI or anything, it is for us, not for the machines. And that's the pointer that I would like to highlight whenever we speak it. Whatever we are implementing, we always have the empathy looking at what makes it easy for people to look at, and how do they look at
Exactly.
this pointer is what I wanted to add upon. How should startups or MSMEs approach data privacy without large compliance budgets? Because most of them feel compliance is a cost, right, which we spoke in the startup.
Mhm.
How do we, these startups and MSMEs don't have that kind of a large budget to look at the compliance aspects. So is there a way that they can look at uh, having compliance but not costing them huge?
Yeah, I mean, cost is not a matter of fact only for small organizations. Even it's a matter of
Yeah,
concern for even large organizations of late.
yeah.
Yeah. So what I suggest is they can go for the open frameworks like to follow like NIST or ISO or MITI guidelines, right? And I mean. If the organizations also would have trained their employees working on I mean it has become the culture of their organization to work on the data privacy, and then privacy is on top of their mind for all the employees who are working. I mean you don't have to work on the cost of poor quality. You don't have to rework on it, or there can be any issues or the breaches later point of time. So they can also look at prioritizing on the high risk data, and then the core controls for it, so that at least they can prioritize and then start working on it, because that they are the ones which are vulnerable. And then they can also work on though just to make a disclaimer that I'm not marketing for any hyperscalers or SaaS vendors. So I mean they can have shared goals with their SaaS vendors, and then they can make use of the privacy features in their SaaS tools itself, right? So that that can bring down their some of their costs, rather than specifically implementing those specific controls and then measures. Yeah.
I think the point clearly goes out saying that look at compliance tools that are available with the frameworks,
Exactly.
and how they can be looked at. Look at what is the bare minimum that you should start with for starting your organization. As things get complex or you grow as an organization, you can look at large pieces of information or the SaaS vendors that can enable you much more. Am I right in saying that, Pradeep?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
What is the biggest myth about privacy compliance that you wish more people knew? Because we are talking more about when we see normally privacy compliance, security, cyber security, they look at kind of jargons for many of the people, right? But if you really look at compliances, looking at the adherence to what the framework or the standards suggest, right? That's what you are compliant with. How do we look at this to be known to many people?
Yeah, I mean, we briefly touched upon this point in the previous section. I mean, the biggest myth is that only large firms need privacy programs. No, I
Hmm.
mean, it's all about even the small startups, small organizations, or the startups. They're handling more sensitive data per user than the large firms. Okay, so you pick up your phone and then you see hundreds of apps which are using a lot of your personal data as well, right? So I mean, you need to implement these privacy guidelines and then frameworks even in small organizations as well. It's not only for larger organizations. And then there's also, general perception that yeah, if you are compliant you are safe. So it's just a one time activity that you are performing for this privacy compliance. So that's not the case. I mean, real safety lies in the vigilance behavior, the governance, and then the culture of the organization, which ensures that data privacy is on top of their mind every time they are working on some of their projects or the day-to-day operations.
Pradeep, I saw one question from William, which is what the pointer that we are talking about. I'm just bringing that this one so that we can address it here.
Mhm.
So he says, can you explain what is privacy by design using a real time example in a layman scenario so that it will be beneficial for all? William's question from the audience.
Okay, so if you ask me, privacy by design in the sense you have to, you will have the security requirements within your development activities or in your design, right? So sometimes you get that requirements from customer itself, whether it is security requirements or privacy requirements, right? So when you say when we stick to the baseline privacy requirements from the customer or within your organization itself, so how do you handle that in terms of how that, whether the data is at rest, whether the data is in transit, or whether the data is in use, how you are going to use the data privacy practices for it, right? Say for example, who has access, you might have the sensitive data in the cloud, right? Who should have the access to that sensitive data, right? And then if the specific data is being used in, for example, in your project itself, say for example, you might have a test data, your customer might have given a sample set of test data, right? And then you might be having production data, right? So I mean, you have the liberty to work on test data, and then you can still tamper it, fudge it, whatever you can do. But when you are given a production data, say for example, you want to move that data from AWS platform to to Azure platform. So you are moving the data. From where are you moving? Are you moving within the European Union itself? If it is about GDPR guidelines, or if you are, to GDPR guidelines. So if you are moving that data, I mean, you have to ensure that data that you are moving from one platform to another platform is not tampered with, right? So that design has to be there in your migration strategy or in your design strategy itself, how you are moving, which data you are moving first, right? So even you can take for example, an insurance company who wants to migrate the data from one platform to another platform. So first priority, he might pick up the corporate clients data, right? So that he might prioritize. So then he might transfer the individual clients data. So you know how these data are sensitive, I mean how it is sensitive, and then how you want to move it. So those kind of strategies you have to define, and then parameters are going to be different for each data, right? So that's how you need to define in your design activities itself.
To add to what Pradeep is saying, William, is that see, by the statement itself is you are saying privacy by design, right? So you will have to include everything that is going to be required as a design parameter, keeping all the compliance requirements that are there to whatever region or specific industry that you are trying to look at or build a product. So what we are trying to say is any product that you want to build, if you are trying to look at two aspects, one is privacy by design by or privacy by default. So default is you have to look at what are the default standard stuff like that. Now by design, whenever you create whatever is needed to have that compliant to the regulatory bodies, is what I think you should look at privacy by design. Is I just wanted to add something which what Pradeep told, and hope we have answered your question, William. Thank you for that question. Coming to our discussion, Pradeep. Now,
Mhm.
how do we look at mm, industry experiences and global privacy regulations shaping the business strategy from your industry experience?
Okay, I mean these global privacy regulations like HIPAA or CCPA, GDPR or DPDP Act. I mean they have significantly shaped the business strategy of by emphasizing the importance of data protection or the customer trust. Say for example, GDPR, that I mean they want that data has to be located within European Union itself, right? And of late even with the DPDP Act coming in, so even India also wants the data to be localized here. So which means that the organizations cannot have their data centers at specific locations, and then you're catering to the world through edge solutions or so on. So you will have to start investing on the data centers specifically within European Union itself, or you have to scale up your data centers and then set it up within India, right? So those kind of investments will have to be made by the organization. So that shapes your business strategy, and then you will have to have the local presence and so on. So now the businesses prioritize trust, localize operations, and then build consent based monetization models and all, right? So that's how it is. Like you would also be knowing that whenever there are some marketing messages coming in and so on, so the customers will be blocking those marketing messages and so on. So you have to ensure that your organizations doesn't blindly push their marketing messages and so on. So you need to have robust systems at the back end where you're catering to the customer needs and then gaining their trust, right? I lost you. I
Yeah,
lost.
I was on mute. Sorry.
Okay.
Uh, some pointers that I want to understand from privacy and compliance across industries like BFSI, healthcare, and telecom.
Mhm.
Are there any new trends you see that are shaping the future of privacy and compliance across these industries?
Yeah, of course, of course. I mean, there have been significant transformation that are happening where in terms of security and privacy and all. So, I mean, of late you might have heard about zero trust architecture and all. So where it focuses on identity centric access controls, and then having AI regulation, because AI has been at the forefront. Transforming the security and privacy frameworks, right? So yeah, you need to ensure that there are some bias detection or algorithmic transparency in terms of for this future of privacy and compliance. And then it's also about ethical AI, ethical AI. So where your AI decisions are explainable, and then you're not poisoning the data that are in your cloud or in your hyperscalers cloud and so on. And then also about your data localization, where we just touched upon, where shaping the infrastructure and then cloud strategy and all. So these are the ones which are shaping the privacy and security future.
There's another important question which is coming on the question and answer. This one I would like to bring it up because the
Mm.
pointer that we are talking, it is correctly matching that pointer there while we speak. I'll bring it up to the screen. Give me a second.
Mhm.
Yeah. So if you see, I have Shailesh who says, how does one keep regional privacy laws into consideration for each of the user, since within country itself we have many local laws? Example, California Privacy Act.
Mhm. I mean, see, I mean, predominantly in US, most states follow CCPA. Okay,
Mm.
so I wouldn't say that. I mean, all states have a different the protection, consumer protection acts. So predominantly, it is being used. So as long as you are adhering to the laws of, I mean, even if it is. used in, I mean, even if there are different acts that are used in different states, there will not be significant changes, maybe 20 to 30% of changes. So you wouldn't say significant changes. So those 20-30% of changes maybe you can incorporate in your design principles. So even you can just compare with GDPR and then DPDP Act, right? So I mean, you wouldn't see more than 20 to 30% changes in terms of whatever the framework that they have in defined. So I mean, main intention is to protect the data and then the privacy information, right?
I think what Pradeep is saying also is right. Sailesh, I would like to add is that uh, we are talking about a privacy act, whether it is any country or any region. It is more about the data that is to be kept, and how do we safeguard that kind of a data, which is a PII information again, which is more about your phone numbers, your address, your PAN card, or your social security numbers, Aadhaar cards. These are driving licenses. These are very, very sensitive information, which once you get access can be having access to many of the pointers because most of them are interlinked, right? Now, if you really look at, that's what the whole country or the world wants to look at, not having privacy act, this one pointers available across. Now coming to DPDP act, what we have in India, it is similar to what uh, CCPA or GDPR or HIPAA or any other compliance requirements are talking about. So, what we are telling is how the data is getting processed, and DPDP is more to look at how your digital assets are protected. That's what we are talking about when it comes to India. We are also looking at our own data protection, why data should not go across the world when other nationalities are looking at restricting data to be accessed from outside the world. So we are also looking at the same framework. It is more of data not to be available outside our country. That's what I would say when we talk about regional privacy laws coming into force, right? That's the point, is what I feel is my view. And there are a lot of pointers that can look at, as Pradeep said, is you will have to look at generic formats, and there will be not major differences when you compare CCPA or GDPR or this one when it comes to data, right? Pradeep, do you agree on that, Pradeep,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
there is
agree.
a difference in what I have in mind and you have some pointers that you want to add?
Yeah, agree with you. I mean, basically every country wants to protect the data, so that's the main crux. Yeah.
Thank you, Pradeep. Now coming to our next point, how do we personally stay ahead in the changing privacy laws and tech trends? Because with the AI coming in, every third day you have a new thing coming up, right? That has to be protected. This has to be safeguarded. There's a new law coming into something, and there is something getting eliminated. So, what is getting eliminated also has to be taken care. What is coming new also has to get implemented. So, how do we look at having ourselves in such a way that we keep up with the trends and stay ahead? Do you have any pointers or some communities that they should follow? Anything on that side, Pradeep?
Yeah, I mean, I would suggest, we have to we have to remain updated with whatever the guidelines or the framework that has been implemented, right? Like for example, GDPR or DPDPA and so on. So I mean, we have to understand it to the core, and then we need to have some mentors also who are experts in these areas. Say, for example, CISOs or DPOs, data privacy officers, and so on. So I mean, we need to have them as mentors. I mean, for junior level folks, in case if they want to get into privacy, or how to personally stay ahead and then understand the trends. So maybe they can also join the communities like Isaka or LinkedIn groups or IAPP and so on. And then maybe they can also get weekly digest from IAPP or TechCrunch privacy and so on. So I mean, I also attend some conferences and then interact with people like you also, where we get some know-how and then knowledge sharing. So that's how I mean, personally, I stay ahead,
I,
understanding the
I think Pradeep, what we are missing at one point is this is my view.
yeah.
What we are doing at CSA also. is a large
Yeah,
scale that we do,
exactly,
right? So
exactly. I mean, that's
Cloud
a point. Yeah,
Security Alliance is a foundation that is more looking at how security has to be looked at. We are having a summit coming up, maybe end of the year now.
yeah,
So
in
I put a
September.
scroll down there, which is going on. Do
Yeah,
register,
it's in
look
September.
at us, see us. See, Power of Knowing Forum is a platform where we conduct podcasts on tech, cybersecurity, growth, and strategy. What we did is we wanted to have best things happening on cybersecurity. So we have partnered with cybersecurity alliance of
Yeah.
Bangalore chapter, and we are doing this podcast in specific with cybersecurity. And Pradeep is part of CSA. I am part of CSA, and we are there here. This is the link that is there for you people to join us and see what is happening in the summit. Now, if you want to understand some of the community things that are there, become a member in CSA Bangalore chapter, and that's the link that is there. It's a free. This one we do conduct some of the sessions on CISSP and some other tech sessions that are there. CSA Bangalore also does some kind of a research in terms of what cybersecurity trends are there, and we have the best and best CIOs, CSOs, security leaders, SMEs, zero trust, identity management, privacy operations, and many of the things. Please join us, and I think you'll have a great insight. Do follow us on the two channels that we have put us. We are on all the LinkedIn platform. We are predominantly looking at LinkedIn, whereas if you want to have our videos looked at, you can see CSA Bangalore and Power of Knowing Forum. These are the two places where we have these sessions being stored for future references. And I think with our episode of 241 today, we are talking about cybersecurity for last 1.5 year now. So I think that's the trends that we have been following with CSA. CSA has been running sessions on a monthly basis also, but when you become a member, I think you'll be in a position to have that kind of an information that you get it on a kind of pointers what Pradeep was saying some time back, right? So you get the insights from the community. You become part of the community. You understand some of the documents, some of the insights that we can look at. Over to that, and what does one privacy champion look like inside an organization? Can anyone become one?
Yeah, I mean, for privacy champion, I mean, he's someone who advocates for data privacy and then, promotes a culture of transparency and accountability in the organization. So, as I was also referring earlier, right? So, we need to have a spark from different verticals of the organization, like HR or IT or legal and so on. So, I mean, these privacy champions are the ones who evangelizes the responsibility of data handling, right?
Mm,
And then they translate the policies into day-to-day relevance, and then how you are implementing it in your projects or in your operations, like as we were I mean mentioning about, privacy by design or privacy in I mean design engineering and so on. So they promote this data privacy practices and then frameworks through stories, and then they are the go-to person for all the organizational folks, so that we are living the data privacy practices on day-to-day basis, and then in every operations or the delivery of the programs, right?
yeah. Now, coming to the next pointer that I want to understand is, what is one thing leaders should stop doing immediately when it comes to privacy compliance?
Okay, so I mean, as a leader, I mean, we have to stop treating privacy as a legal formality. That's not the case,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So that we have to come out of that mindset, and then you have to stop avoiding any blame games post incident and so on. So we have to have the lessons learned and then move forward. So we ensure that we are not making the same mistakes, and then and also at times as a leader we sometimes we will have a helicopter view. So we need to have the view from the grassroots level as well. So we have to stop ignoring the feedback that we get from grassroots. So we have to promote transparency, acknowledge mistakes, and then embed privacy in all of these strategic reviews, so that this becomes the way of life or the culture within the organization. So that's what I mean. I would say that leaders have to stop doing it. Rather, yeah.
Now, the point is very, very clear, saying that we should not. I take 100% acceptance or agree to what you said. Is we should not treat it as a checkbox. That's what we are talking about. We
Exactly.
just ticked it, and we should not. We should make it as a culture, and that's what we should look at. Now, coming to, if I have to uh, take or convince a CEO to invest in privacy culture,
Mhm.
and I have only 60 seconds to do that, what would you say?
Okay, so I would emphasize on, data privacy is not something which is internal to the organization. It's also about having an impact on our business, because when our customers are giving their information or sharing the information to us, I mean, it drives our revenue, and then reputation, and then resilience, right? So I mean, if there is a data breach, and then I mean, your customers will lose trust on you, right? You will lose business. So that's where you have to emphasize on data privacy practices or frameworks, and then I will convince the CEO that this has to be very robust within the organization. So I mean, if you are trusting in your brand or in the future of the revenue, and even customers trust in our organization, so we have to implement data privacy
I
practice.
think I have a different perspective. Let me. I think this came out just like that. So I will say I don't want to do anything which is not gaining a momentum for others to implement. I will say
Yeah,
my data is private. So
exactly.
I want to keep them private. So
Correct.
okay, so I think that is what I would say from my view. People have different ways of telling it when they have short span to look at. What are some metrics that should leaders track when ensuring privacy is truly embedded into organizations' DNA? Right,
Mhm.
that has to be part of it. So what
Okay.
is that?
Yeah, I mean, if it has to be within the organization's DNA and all, right?
Mm,
So, I mean, you need to track the employee awareness score. So, whether all the employees are trained, they are aware of data privacy practices or frameworks, and then what are the vendor risk rating that you are having in terms of the 3PP vendors who are partnered with you, who are also going to handle the data of your customers or your organization, right?
mm,
And also, I mean, the incident response time for your DSRs. So that is one of the KPIs. And then, I mean, as we were also referring to, employee awareness. So, I mean, you need to also have to look at the privacy training completion rate also, right? So whether your organization is already trained and so on. And then, yeah, we already spoke about the DSR, turnaround time
mm.
from the incident response time and so on. So these are the key KPIs that we have to look into. Yeah,
I think you said the right pointers. What gets measured is what we should look at, and the
correct.
DSR trainings, incident response time, employee feedback is what you are talking about.
Yeah.
That's what I think. How do we build a privacy culture that employs new or existing employees instantaneously recognize and embrace it? Is there something that we can look at, Pradeep?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like as I was referring to, right? So it's also about the leadership behavior and then leadership practice. So I mean, your leaders have to be security champions or the privacy champions, so that people see that, yeah, you walk the talk, and then they follow you, right? And then I mean, the leaders talk in every meetings, every decisions that they are taking, and in every forums or all employee meets and so on. So you need to have visual cues like posters, dashboards within your organization, right? Or maybe the privacy Friday huddles or the quizzes, right?
Hmm.
And then maybe you can also communicate the stories about the breaches and then its impact to different organization, or even to the same organization itself. So these kind of stories are culture that promotes the employees to follow the privacy practices or the frameworks, right? So that's how the employees instantly recognize and then embrace the data privacy frameworks.
Coming to one pointer which we normally ask, that's a standard question which we ask in most of our podcasts,
Mm.
because we see youngsters coming and seeing the market, and today's market is so confusing that they don't know where to start, whether it is programming, whether it is security, whether it is database or any other field that you talk about, even
Mm.
in the other fields, not only IT, they
Mm.
are confused. And and most of the people look at leaders to tell them where should they start and what is that we should look at. In the same point, I would like to ask you, what advice would you give to young professionals entering the field of cybersecurity and privacy?
Okay. I mean, basically, you have to stay curious, right? So stay hungry, stay foolish. That's what I would say. So they have to master the fundamentals of, whether the law of the land or the technology or the ethics in terms of data privacy and so on. And they should also, learn the cross disciplinary thinking and all, because these people will be working on some of the data. They might not know whether if they are working on CCPA or the GDPR, I mean, other projects. So sometimes it happens that the data, they are not, I mean, they are not aware, and then they might copy it to their local laptops, which is not allowed. You are supposed to keep the data at the data center or the servers within the Europe or within the US, where you have to work there itself, right? So I mean, they have to understand these human behavior or the understanding of the technology or the usage of data and so on. So that's what I would suggest, and then yeah, pick up the certifications which are relevant for data privacy or the security and so on.
I think you've told it in as many as words as saying that start with the foundations, start with
Exactly.
what we are there. Currently, understand what are the trends. My view is start with basics. I
Yeah.
understand what is security, what is privacy, what is compliance, what is risk,
Yeah.
what is governance, and stuff like that. Then you choose on topics that you want. Your focus goes in terms of something that matches you, your mindset. What is that you are having into learning? You can have multidisciplinary learning, right? How security can implement compliance, how privacy can implement influence compliance. These are the pointers that you can take. Privacy, it is just not a skill, because it's
Yeah.
it's a mission, because it takes time for you to understand what is affecting and what is not affecting, to the organization and to the uh, person individually also, right? So that's what I would like to say when it comes to learning. Looking back at the last point, that what's one thing that you have done differently as a privacy and compliance leader? Any pointers that you would like to share? That would be our final question on the day, on the topic that we are discussing.
Okay. I mean, if you ask me, if I look back, maybe I would have picked up, storytelling as a tool for a cultural change, right?
Mhm.
Because if you just make a plain vanilla framework or the practice, privacy practices within organization, I mean, people will lose interest. So you need to make them understand through real life scenarios. So what are the impacts because of a data breach, or what are the impacts in case if they are mishandling the data or misusing the data, and so on, so that these things can help compliance missteps and so on. So for example, if people are working on some upgrade activities or migration of data from one platform to another platform and all, so how cautious they have to be in handling those data, right? So I mean, both platforms might not support the same data structure. So those kind of real life scenarios we have to train the engineers, so that they are cautious, and then they understand the impact better. I mean, if you just implement a framework and ask them to go through it, they would just go through it and then forget it, right? So that's what I would say.
That is the pointer, that what is happening today with the fast trending reels thing that is happening. Everything is a tip and tool kind of a thing that is happening in the industry. I
Yeah,
take what you are saying, Pradeep. It is more to look at mm, personal reflections, emotional wisdom to share is what I think is more important that we should look at. And with that time, I have my pointers completed on what I had in mind to have your thoughts around, Pradeep.
yeah.
Any final pointers before we conclude the session?
Yeah, I mean, I request everyone to join the CSA Bangalore chapter and
Yes.
then participate in the AI summit that's coming up sometime in September, I guess.
Yeah.
So there'll be a lot of, prominent leaders who would be participating and then giving their insights and then their best practices in their organization and so on. So please participate and then join. And then they also have a vision of having more than 1 million cyber
Security
warrior
persons.
security warriors by 2030, and then to work on research papers and so on. So there is a lot of scope for people to make their career in security or privacy and so on. So be part of the journey. That's what I would say.
So I've dropped in the scroll that is there, which I will also post it on the chat, where here you can look at joining us on cybersecurity, where you can join. This is the place where you can join, and if you are looking at the summit details, you can go to this link that I'm putting. Register yourself, be an this one, and see how you can be part of the Cloud Security Alliance part. Now, coming to Power of Knowing Forum, we've been streaming this podcast on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. We hope you found this discussion valuable. Thanks for joining us on LinkedIn Live. Our podcast for the next session is happening tomorrow, which is episode 242, Intervention 101, Trust and Understanding, at 6:30 p.m. And looking forward to see you again. And thank you, Pradeep, for being here. And it's
Yeah.
been great having you on the session.
Yeah,
You're on.
before leaving, final words like thank you very much, Prem, for having me here. It was a fantastic session. That I mean, I got to know a lot of things from you, and then continue whatever you are doing, because I mean, a lot of people will get to know the industry insights and then the real life scenarios and so on. So you're doing a fantastic job. So
Thank you, Pradeep.
more power to
Thank
you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah,
Thank you. Looking forward to see you again for another session.
yeah, yeah.
And good day. Bye.
Good night. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Have a nice day. Have a nice.